Hello, my name is Serena Stenberg, and welcome to my country presentation on the Italian education system. To begin with, I'll talk about what I'll be going over in the presentation. I'll go over contextual information, the system structure of the Italian education system, the quantitative data of Italian education, some challenges and weaknesses, strengths, and current events um, of the Italian education system. First, I'll go over the geographical information of Italy. It's the regional peninsula south of the European continent, and it includes the islands of Sardinia and Sicily. Um, the geographic proximity of Italy to the EU allows it to participate in EU educational systems, and the EU influences policymaking in education for Italy. So for some contextual information, I'll go over some historical background, the economic status of Italy, political information, and cultural influences on the Italian education system. Historically, Italy has had its fair share of its struggles around especially with world wars. After an era of parliamentary government came to a close in the 1920s, Mussolini established a fascist dictatorship, um, and his alliance with Nazi Germany led to some economic um, recessions in Italy after the Nazi defeat in World War II. The impact of the world wars and fascism in Italy has led to political and economic turmoil during that time. Um, fascist education systems in the 1920s was shaped like a Western educational system, but um, it its aims were reflected into fascist ideology and fascist Italian ideology that was within the educational system in Italy was racist towards Italian Jews, and it instilled fascist political ideology into learners. Other historical and cultural information relevant to the Italian education system is the role of religion and religious history in Italy. The Papal States have had considerable historical control within Italy and still influences the culture of Italy today. It has traditionally been Roman Catholic uh, religious state, and school systems in Italy are not secular, so they do teach religions in the school system, and I'll talk more about that later in the presentation. Economically and fiscally, our the Italian education system has been underfunded, and the quality of education in the system has been an issue. Uh, Between 2008 and 2013, public expenditures at all levels in the Italian education system have dropped by 10%. So, this is something that um, has a considerable influence on the shaping of the Italian education system. Um, Politically, the way that education is structured in Italy is that it's currently governed by the Ministry of Education, University, and Research, or the MIUR, and it's responsible for governance of the education system and sets nationwide minimum standards and central principles. Um, Policies and funding are under the control of the MIUR, but reforms have been passed to give autonomy back to the school systems, and I'll talk about that more later. So, the structure of the educational system in Italy is kind of unique and uh, It's compulsory for ages 6 to 16, and the school systems begin with kindergarten for 3 to 6 year olds. Primary schools are attended by children between ages 6 and 11, and most go on to secondary school, but this isn't required by the Italian education system. Uh, Secondary school is structured a little bit differently. There are several different tracks that a student can take, and it's divided into different categories. First, technical and trade schools, second, art schools, third, teacher training schools, and fourth, his scientific and humanistic preparatory schools. Segmenting these schools allows students to specialize in um, the knowledge that is most appealing to them. After completing secondary school, students may continue to tertiary school, and there's 3 levels of tertiary school, and that's also not compulsory. So, some quantitative data. One way to measure if the an education system is healthy, is thriving, is through quantitative data. Currently, in Italy, they are underperforming on a lot of the international tests. Here is the 2015 PISA results for Italy, and you can see that they are below average in most of the subjects, with the exception of math. They're kind of at the average. Um, and uh, the PISA test results not only reflected shortcomings in the education of the students in Italy, but it also revealed high inequality rates between genders and immigrants. The gender gap between boys and girls is higher than average in the system, and has features that may hinder equity, such as grade repetition, student truancy, higher than average early school leaving rates, um, especially with immigrant born students. For the Italian Tims and Pearls results, um, they scored a little bit fairer on this than they did with the PISA, but it's still underperforming in academic settings. For the Tims results, they had an average of 576 score, ranked 30th in 2015, and then in 2016, the Pearls results were an average of around 540 with a rank of 17th. So, some of the challenges for the Italian education system are underperformance of on international testing, which I explained previously, and then some major issues that are currently being seen in the Italian education system are aging teacher populations, underfunding of schools, marginalization of religions, and minority languages. Currently, one of the main issues facing in Italy's educational system is its aging teacher population. About 1 out of 2 teachers, 48% in Italy, are age 50 and above, which is, and the OECD average for aging teachers is around 34%. So this means that Italy will have to renew about 1 in 2 members of its teaching workforce within the next decade or so in order to replace the teachers that will be retiring. Um, the issue with the aging teacher population in the Italian education system is the connection between salaries and seniority. The continued strong link between teachers' seniority and their career progress hinders the efforts and motivations to improve conditions for teachers. Um, and there are policies that are going to be in place, but I'll talk about those in the next section. Another issue with the Italian education system is underfunding. According to the OECD, Italy spends less on average on education, with spending around 4% of its GDP. in 2013, and this is considerably lower than a lot of developing nations in the world. And then some of the other main issues within the Italian education system are equity problems with religion and language. Um, as I mentioned, historically, Italy has been a Roman Catholic state, and its school systems are non secular, which means that they do involve religious education in their teaching. Um, in an attempt to make education more equitable, they had a 1984 agreement with the Catholic Church and a wide variety of other religions to make an agreement on providing necessary education for all religions, but not all religious groups have signed this agreement, and one of the gaps in this agreement is with Muslim students. Until now, no Muslim organizations have signed an agreement with the state, and um, which practically excludes them from having any right to establish religious teaching in the public school system. Uh, so there's an exclusion of some religious practices in the education system in Italy. Another issue with equity is a marginalized minority language speaking group in Italy, and this is the Friulian speakers. The area of Friuli, Venezia Giulia in northern Italy has historically and geographically been in between Western and Eastern Europe, and consequently the ruling classes in the area was different from the common language and people speaking of the Friulian language. So it has been considered lower class and stigmatized in the area, and which excluded them from the educational system and has been historically stigmatized. So, some of the strengths in the Italian education system is their recognition of the issues that they have within their system, and then the policies and reforms that are being put in place to address these issues. As I mentioned, some of the challenges facing the Italian education system are the aging teacher population, and in order to address issues of the aging population, among other things, the MIUR established the Good School Reform, La Buena Escuela. Um, and the aims of this reform was to address issues with teacher recruitment, adding merit based components of teacher salaries, promoting teachers' professional development, promoting school autonomy, updating curriculum, promoting digital and language learning, and emphasizing work based learning. Um, and this was established around the 2017. And this is in hopes to address the issues that I talked about in the previous slide. Aside from that, they're trying to address issues with the Friulian language system. In 1996, regional law was enacted to make first conscious steps towards linguistic policies. Later in 1999, they tried to promote the several historical minority languages spoken in Italy, and that until 2007 was the Friulian language approved as uh, recognized language in Italy. So the minority speaking languages in Italy haven't been recognized until 2007, but they're trying to address these issues with policies and reforms. So, some current issues that are facing the Italian school system and many other school systems in the world right now is the coronavirus or the COVID-19 virus. Some of the barriers and solutions that the Italian education system, I'll talk about in this slide, So, Italy has been one of the most impacted countries by the COVID-19 virus, and the MIUR announced plans for continuing education with a newly designed committee. So, in response to the issues and barriers surrounding the COVID-19, they created a committee and with some goals in mind. First, they wanted to start off the next school year taking into account the current epidemiological emergency situation. Second, they wanted to construct schools with new logistical solutions. Third, have digital innovations to strengthen remote learning and other distance learning methodologies. Four, they want to do initial training of and recruitment of teachers with the provisions of distance learning as part of their training. And then, fifthly, they wanted to consolidate and develop networks of education and training services for children from birth to 6 years old. And then they wanted to address relaunching the quality of school services in current emergency contingencies. And that's the end of my presentation, and I hope you enjoyed it.